She had exactly 11 minutes left before her whole world flipped upside down, and she didn't even know it. Chioma was just sitting by the window, holding a warm cup of tea, scrolling through old pictures on her phone, completely unaware that the next man who walked through that coffee shop door was about to change the direction of her life forever. But here's the part nobody saw coming. 3 months later, that same man would be standing in the rain outside her father's gate, begging her not to get on a plane, while somewhere across the city, a woman who had loved him quietly for years was making one final move to destroy everything. What happened in between will either restore your faith in love, or remind you why some hearts should never be trusted too quickly. Stay with me till the end because this one is deep. Before we go there, if you're new to this channel, welcome. We tell real, raw love stories every single week. So hit that subscribe button now and turn on notifications, because you don't want to miss what's coming next. Alright, let's begin. Chioma was born in Seoul, in a small clinic near Mapo, to a Korean mother and a Nigerian father who had met while he was studying international trade. Growing up, she never quite belonged fully to either world. She had her mother's soft eyes and her father's warm skin, and people always had something to say about it. Children at school asked if she was adopted. Strangers on the street asked where she was really from, as if Seoul wasn't a real enough answer. Her mother used to hold her face after nights like that and whisper the same thing every time. "You are not a mistake, Chioma. You are two beautiful things fused into one." At 18, her father made a decision that broke her heart at the time. He sat her down in the living room, her mother beside him, and told her she would be going to Nigeria for university. "You will thank me one day," he told her at the airport, holding her face in his hands the same way her mother always did. "I don't want you spending your whole life only knowing half of where you come from." She cried the entire flight. She was leaving her mother, her friends, her city, everything familiar, for a country she had only visited twice as a small child and barely remembered. Nigeria was loud in a way Seoul never was. It was chaotic, warm, unfiltered, and completely unforgiving of quietness. At first she hated it. She missed the order of Seoul, the quiet subways, the predictable rhythm of her old life. But slowly, something in her began to change. Her aunties taught her how to cook things her father used to make quietly on Sunday mornings. Her cousins teased her mercilessly about her accent until she learned to defend herself louder than anyone in the room. She studied business at university, made friends who challenged her, and became a woman who could walk into any room and not feel like she had to shrink herself to be accepted. 8 years later, she was thanking him, exactly like he said she would. When she finally graduated, her father called her one evening, his voice thick with something between pride and longing. "Come home," he said. "Seoul is still your home too. Your mother misses you. I miss you." So she packed her life into 2 suitcases and flew back to the city she was born in but barely remembered. Landing at Incheon with a strange mixture of excitement and fear settled in her chest. Her mother met her at arrivals holding a small handwritten sign that simply said, "Welcome home, my daughter," in both Korean and English. And the moment Chioma saw it, 8 years of distance collapsed into a single, long, wordless hug at the gate. "You look so much like your father now," her mother said, laughing through tears, cupping Chioma's face the same way she used to when Chioma was small. "Is that a good thing?" Chioma asked, smiling. "It's the best thing," her mother said. "It means you carried both of us with you the whole time." That night, lying in her old childhood bedroom, Chioma stared at the ceiling and wondered quietly what kind of life she would actually build here. Now that Nigeria had shaped her into someone who no longer needed anyone's permission to belong. That morning, 3 days after landing, still adjusting to the cold and the quiet and the way people moved so quickly without touching each other, she found a small coffee shop 2 streets from her parents' house. She ordered her tea, picked the seat by the window because the light was good and the noise was low, and let herself breathe for the first time in years. That was when the door opened. Kim Jun walked in still in his gym clothes, hair slightly damp, phone in one hand, his mind somewhere else entirely on the acquisition his father's company was finalizing that week. He wasn't looking for anything. He wasn't looking for anyone. But his eyes landed on her before his brain even gave the order. Something shifted in his chest. Instantly, he didn't know her name. He didn't know her story. He just knew he needed to know both. He walked to the counter, ordered his coffee, and instead of taking the seat by the door like he normally did, he sat 2 tables away from her, angled just enough to steal glances without being obvious. Except he wasn't as smooth as he thought. She caught him on the 3rd glance. "Can I help you?" she asked, one eyebrow raised, her Nigerian accent laced subtly under her Korean. He smiled, caught. "Sorry. You have a very calming face." "That's a new one," she said, unimpressed but slightly amused. "I'm Kim Yoon." "Chioma. Chioma," he repeated slowly, like he was testing how it felt in his mouth. "That's beautiful. Is it Nigerian?" "It's mine," she said simply. "That's all that matters." He laughed, surprised by the sharpness of her answer, and something about the sound of his laugh made her chest do something she wasn't ready for. "You're not from here originally, are you?" he said. It wasn't quite a question. "I was born 2 streets from where we're sitting," she said, "but I grew up somewhere else." "Long story." "I like long stories," he said. "Do you?" she said, testing him. "Or do you like being told things quickly, so you can move on to the next thing?" He blinked, caught off guard by how easily she'd read him. "Fair. I deserved that." They talked for almost an hour that morning, about nothing important and everything important at the same time. He walked her halfway home after, hands in his pockets, unsure why he didn't want the conversation to end. Neither of them said it out loud, but both of them felt it. Something had started. If you've ever met someone and felt like your whole body knew before your mind caught up, drop a comment below telling us where you met them. I read every single one. Kim Jun didn't tell her at first who his family was. He didn't want that to be the reason she looked at him differently. His father, Chairman Kim, was one of the richest men in South Korea, owner of a shipping and technology empire that touched almost every major city in Asia. His mother, Madam Yoon, was elegant, sharp, and fiercely protective of the family name. Kim Jun himself was already being groomed to take over operations within the next 2 years, sitting in board meetings most men his age had never even seen the inside of. Chioma didn't find out until their 4th meeting, when his driver picked them both up in a car that cost more than most houses, gliding through Gangnam traffic like it belonged to a different world entirely. "You could have told me," she said, arms folded in the back seat, watching the city lights slide past the window. "Would it have changed how you saw me?" She thought about it honestly. "Probably, at first." "That's exactly why I didn't tell you," he said quietly. "I wanted you to like Kim Jun, not Kim Jun the heir." That answer disarmed her more than she expected. Weeks turned into months. They became inseparable in the quiet way real relationships build, not through grand declarations but through small, consistent moments. He remembered she took her tea without sugar. She remembered he hated silence in cars and always needed music playing low. He took her to a rooftop restaurant overlooking the Han River one evening, and instead of ordering for her the way he usually did with people who expected it, he simply slid the menu toward her. "You choose," he said. "I want to know what you actually like, not what looks good on a date." She smiled at that more than she meant to. "You're different when nobody important is watching." "Nobody important is watching right now," he said. "It's just you." They laughed easily. They argued sometimes about small things, whether soju tasted better warm or cold, whether Lagos traffic was worse than Seoul rush hour, and always found their way back to laughing again. One Saturday, he took her to Namsan Tower, insisting on walking the whole way up instead of taking the cable car, ignoring her complaints the entire climb. "This better be worth it," she said, breathless, hands on her knees halfway up the stairs. "Everything worth having takes a little effort," he said, grinning, and she rolled her eyes even as she smiled. At the top, they added a small padlock to the fence overlooking the city, her handwriting on one side, his on the other, nothing dramatic, just their names and the date. He didn't say anything grand about forever. He just held her hand while the wind picked up and the city lights stretched out endlessly below them, and for once, neither of them felt the need to fill the silence with words. Chioma decided it was time for her own family to meet him properly. She invited Kim Jun over for Sunday dinner, her hands trembling slightly as she set the table, more nervous about this meeting than she cared to admit. Her mother welcomed him warmly at the door, pulling him into a hug like he was already family. "Chioma has not stopped talking about you," she said, laughing. Come in, you must be hungry." Her father was quieter, watching Kim Jun carefully all through dinner, studying the way he spoke to Chioma, the way he laughed at her jokes, the way his eyes followed her around the room even when he wasn't saying anything. By the end of the meal, something in his face had softened. "You are welcome in this house," her father told him as the evening wound down, walking him to the door while Chioma cleared the table inside. "My daughter has a good heart. She has worked hard to become the woman standing in that kitchen right now, and she did not do it to have that heart played with." "I understand, sir," Kim Jun said, meeting his eyes steadily. "I hope you do," her father said, his voice gentle but firm. "Because if you break it, it will not matter whose son you are. Do we understand each other?" "We do, sir," Kim Jun said. "I don't intend to give you a reason to worry." Her father studied him a moment longer, then nodded slowly, satisfied for now, and clasped his shoulder before letting him leave into the night. One evening, sitting on the steps outside her family's home, the streetlights flickering on above them, he finally said it. "I think I'm falling for you, Chioma." She looked at him for a long moment, searching his face for the joke that never came. "I think I fell already." He didn't kiss her that night. He just held her hand a little tighter and stayed a little longer than he should have. Some love stories don't need fireworks to feel powerful. Sometimes the quiet ones hit the hardest. But not everyone was happy about it. Madame Yun found out about Chioma through a photograph one of her assistants showed her, the two of them laughing outside a restaurant. Her face didn't change much, but her voice did. "Who is this girl?" "Just a friend of Kim Jun's, ma'am. Find out everything about her today." By nightfall, Madame Yun knew Chioma's full history. Nigerian father, Korean mother, raised abroad for most of her adult life. No corporate background, no family alliance that mattered to the boardroom. In her eyes, none of it added up to someone fit to stand beside her son's future. She didn't forbid anything outright. She was smarter than that. Instead, she invited Kim Jun to dinner and slipped in comments carefully, like knives wrapped in silk. "You know the Choi family's daughter asked about you again," she said one evening, swirling tea in a porcelain cup. "She just returned from London. Beautiful girl. Ambitious. Her father sits on 3 boards your father needs." "Mother, I'm seeing someone." "I know," she said simply. "I just want you to remember who you are and what this family needs from its heir." She never said the words "leave her." She didn't have to. The pressure sat in the room like smoke, quiet but impossible to ignore. Kim Jun didn't tell Chioma about that conversation. He thought he was protecting her. He was wrong. Protecting someone by hiding truth from them almost never ends well. And this story is proof of that. If the story is hitting you right now, do me a favor and tap that like button. It helps this video reach more people who need a good love story tonight. Now back to Chioma and Kim Jun. Around the same time, a different kind of storm was brewing inside Chairman Kim's company. A rival conglomerate, run by a man named Director Cho, had been quietly buying up shares in one of their key logistics partners, trying to force a hostile takeover through pressure and intimidation rather than fair competition. Director Cho had a reputation in certain circles for playing dirty, for using leverage that had nothing to do with business and everything to do with fear. Chairman Kim had been fighting him off for months, and the tension was starting to spill into every corner of the family's life, including the son he was preparing to hand the company to. "You need to be careful who you're seen with right now," Chairman Kim told Kim Jun one night in his study. Papers spread across the desk. "Cho's people are watching everything. Any weakness, any distraction, they will use it." "Chioma is not a weakness," Kim Jun said firmly. "I did not say she was," his father replied. "I said be careful. Men like Cho do not fight fair, and they do not care who gets hurt in the process." Kim Jun didn't fully understand what that warning meant yet. He would soon enough. Director Cho requested a private meeting with Chairman Kim not long after, ostensibly to discuss a partnership. though everyone in the room understood it for what it really was. He sat across the polished table with the calm confidence of a man who rarely lost. "Your company has been unstable lately?" Cho said smoothly, sliding a folder across the table. "Shareholders talk. They worry when the future of a company sits in the hands of a young man distracted by personal matters instead of business fundamentals." "My son's personal life is not open for discussion," Chairman Kim replied evenly. "Everything becomes open for discussion once shares start moving." "Chairman Kim," Cho said, smiling without warmth, "I would hate for something so easily avoidable to cost this family everything it's built. Consider this a courtesy. Not every rival extends one." Chairman Kim said nothing further, but the moment Cho left, he called his son in immediately, the weight of the warning settling heavily over the room. 3 months into their relationship, a gossip blog got hold of pictures of Chioma and Kim Jun together. By morning, her name was trending across Korean entertainment forums, most of the comments cruel and dismissive. "Gold digger. Foreign girl chasing money. Does she even know Korean culture?" Words she had spent her whole life trying to outrun in one identity or the other, now thrown at her by strangers who knew nothing about her. What she didn't know was that the tip to the blog hadn't come from nowhere. It had come from someone working quietly for director Cho, who had realized that destabilizing Kim Jun personally might destabilize the family's focus at exactly the moment he needed them distracted. She sat on her bed that night reading comment after comment, feeling something crack quietly inside her chest. Kim Jun came straight to her house when he heard. "Don't read that garbage," he said, taking the phone gently from her hands. "They're not wrong to ask who I am," she said, voice trembling. "I don't come from your world, Kim Jun." "You come from a better one," he said. "One with heart." She almost believed him completely, until 3 days later, when his childhood friend Mina, who had loved him quietly for years, decided the timing was right to strike. Mina had access to the family, history with Kim Jun that Chioma didn't have, and a jealousy she'd buried for a long time. She leaked a private detail about Chioma's family to the same blog, twisting it just enough to make Chioma look like she had lied about her background to seem more sympathetic. It wasn't true, but by the time the truth would come out, the damage was already spreading. Chioma confronted Kim Jun the next day, hurt and confused. "Why didn't you warn me people close to you could do this?" "I didn't know Mina would." "You didn't know?" she repeated, quietly furious. "There's a lot you don't tell me, Kim Jun. Your mother, your friend. Whatever is happening with your father's company that has your driver looking over his shoulder every time we go anywhere. You keep protecting me from things I should already know." That was the first real crack between them. He should have told her everything that night, his mother's pressure, director Cho's schemes, all of it. He didn't. He let the silence sit there instead, thinking time would smooth it over. Time doesn't smooth over silence. It usually makes it worse. A week later, Madame Yoon finally said the words directly to Chioma. In a private meeting Chioma didn't even know had been arranged until she walked into the restaurant and saw her sitting there alone. "You seem like a lovely girl," Madame Yoon said, calm and composed. "But my son has responsibilities you cannot understand. This family needs someone who was raised for this life. I am not asking you to disappear. I am simply asking you to think clearly about what you are walking into." Chioma sat across from her, spine straight, voice steady despite the storm inside her. "With respect, ma'am, I didn't walk into this for a title. I walked into this for your son. Love is not always enough," Madame Yoon said quietly. "I loved once too. It did not save me from heartbreak." That sentence stayed with Chioma long after she left that restaurant, though she didn't yet understand what it truly meant. She didn't go straight home afterward. She walked instead, aimlessly, through streets she was still learning to recognize as her own city, until she found herself outside her mother's favorite bakery, the one they used to visit together when Chioma was small. She sat on a bench outside with a warm bun she didn't really want, replaying Madame Yoon's words over and over. Her mother found her there an hour later, having been called by Chioma's father who'd noticed she wasn't answering her phone. "You look like a woman who just met my mother-in-law," her mother said, sitting down beside her without asking permission, the way only mothers can. Chioma let out a short, Surprised laugh. Something like that. She once said something similar to me, her mother admitted quietly. Different words, same meaning. Your father's family worried a Korean woman wouldn't understand Nigerian ways, wouldn't be strong enough for the life they lived back home. I heard versions of, "You don't understand what you're walking into," for almost 2 years before anyone in that family looked at me and saw a person instead of a complication. How did you get through it? I didn't wait for their approval to decide I was enough, her mother said. I decided that on my own, and then I simply kept showing up as myself until the people worth keeping around eventually caught up. Chioma rested her head on her mother's shoulder, the bakery lights glowing softly against the evening street, and for a moment, the ache in her chest felt a little more bearable. She didn't tell Kim Jun about the meeting right away. Instead, something in her started pulling back, protecting herself the way she'd learned to over years of not fully belonging anywhere. She started replying to his texts slower. She started finding reasons to be busy. He noticed, and it scared him. "Talk to me," he said one night, showing up at her door unannounced. "Something changed." "Maybe I'm just being realistic," she said. "About what? About whether I actually fit into your life, Kim Jun, or whether I'm just a nice distraction before you go back to the life your family already planned for you." "That's not fair." "Maybe not," she said, tears finally slipping. "But it's honest. And I need you to be honest with me too. What has your mother said to you?" He hesitated 1 second too long. That hesitation told her everything. If you've ever felt someone pull away right when you needed them to hold on tighter, comment the word "same" below. Let's see how many of us have lived this exact moment. The hesitation broke something between them that night. Chioma walked away from that conversation feeling like a fool for believing that love alone could carry two people from such different worlds. Kim Jun stood outside her house for almost an hour afterward, unable to bring himself to knock again, replaying every moment he had stayed quiet when honesty was needed instead. 2 weeks passed with barely any contact between them. Chioma buried herself in job interviews, trying to build a life in Seoul that didn't depend on anyone else's approval. She spent evenings with a small group of Nigerian and mixed heritage friends she'd found through a community group online, women who understood without explanation what it felt like to live between two cultures, never fully claimed by either. "You don't owe that family your whole identity just to be loved," her friend Ngozi told her over dinner one night, spooning jollof rice onto Chioma's plate. "If loving you means constantly proving you're worthy of a seat at their table, that's not love, that's an audition." "It's not that simple," Chioma said quietly. "I actually love him, Ngozi." "I know," Ngozi said gently. "That's exactly why it hurts this much." Those dinners kept her grounded during the weeks she felt most unmoored, reminding her that whatever happened with Kim Jun, she had already built a life of her own worth protecting. Her father noticed the shift in her, the quiet returning to her eyes that had disappeared in the months she'd been seeing Kim Jun. "You've been different," her father said one evening, sitting across from her at dinner. She looked at him and for the first time in weeks, let her guard down. "I don't know if I belong in his world, Papa. Sometimes I don't know if I belong in any world." Her father set down his spoon. "Chioma, I sent you to Nigeria because I never wanted you thinking you had to shrink yourself to fit anywhere. You are not half of anything. You are whole. If a family cannot see that, the problem is their eyesight, not your worth." Those words settled something in her, but they didn't erase the ache. Meanwhile, the pressure on Kim Jun's family was escalating quietly behind closed doors. Director Cho, frustrated that his takeover attempt on the logistics partner was failing, had shifted his strategy entirely. He began spreading rumors within the business community that Chairman Kim's company was unstable, that the heir was distracted, unfocused, unfit to inherit the empire being built for him. He even had one of his men approach Kim Jun directly at a business function, smiling as he delivered a warning disguised as friendly advice. "Family businesses fall apart when the next generation gets distracted by things that don't matter," the man said, swirling his glass. "Your father built something fragile right now. A man in your position should be careful what he lets get in the way of protecting it." Kim Jun understood exactly what was being implied, and for the first time he felt real fear that his relationship with Chioma, something that had nothing to do with any of this, was being used as a weapon against his own family. He should have told Chioma this too. He didn't. Instead, he threw himself into handling Cho quietly on his own, staying later at the office, missing 2 dinners with Chioma in the same week without fully explaining why. He told himself he was protecting her from stress that wasn't hers to carry. In reality, he was simply repeating the same mistake his father had made with him for years, believing that silence was a form of strength instead of recognizing it for what it actually was, a slow erosion of trust neither of them could afford to lose. One night, working late at the office, he received a call from an unfamiliar number. A calm, unfamiliar voice on the other end simply said, "Tell your father to reconsider the shareholder vote next month. Things are much easier when everyone stays reasonable." Before hanging up without waiting for a response, Kim Jun sat frozen at his desk for a long moment, phone still pressed to his ear, the quiet threat settling into his chest like ice water. He told his father about the call immediately. He still did not tell Chioma. Mina had known Kim Jun since they were children, their families connected through decades of business dinners and holiday gatherings. She had loved him quietly since she was 16, watching him grow into the kind of man everyone expected her to eventually marry, the kind of match that made perfect sense on paper to everyone except him. For years, she told herself patience would work in her favor, that eventually he would look at her the way she looked at him. When Chioma appeared, all of that patience curdled into something bitter. "You don't even know her," Mina had said to him once, weeks earlier, trying to keep her voice light over dinner with mutual friends. "She's been in Seoul for what, a few months? I've known you almost 20 years. Knowing someone longer doesn't mean knowing them better," Kim Jun had replied simply, and the words had stayed lodged in Mina's chest like a splinter she couldn't remove. Seeing the distance growing between Chioma and Kim Jun, Mina decided to make her move. She invited Kim Jun to a business dinner his father was hosting, knowing his mother would be there, knowing the optics would matter. She stood close to him all evening, laughing at his jokes, playing the part his mother had quietly hoped for from the beginning. Someone photographed them. Of course they did. By morning, the picture was everywhere, captioned with speculation that the heir had already moved on. Chioma saw it before Kim Jun even had the chance to call her. She didn't cry this time. She simply felt something inside her go still and quiet, the way water goes still right before it freezes completely. When Kim Jun finally called, she picked up. "It's not what it looks like," he said immediately. "I believe you," she said, and she meant it. "But I think the picture doesn't lie about something else. I think it shows exactly where you're expected to be, Kim Jun, and where I'm not." "Chioma, don't do this." "I'm not doing anything," she said quietly. "I'm just finally seeing clearly." She hung up before he could respond, and for the first time since they'd met, Kim Jun felt real fear, the kind that sits in your stomach and refuses to leave. He drove to his mother's house that same night, angrier than he'd ever been in her presence. "Did you set this up?" he asked, holding up his phone with the photo on the screen. "I invited you to a dinner your father hosted," Madame Yoon said calmly. "What happened after was not my doing. You know how this looks. I know how it protects this family," she said. "Kim Jun, I am not trying to hurt you. I am trying to prepare you. Love like this, across such different worlds, rarely survives the pressure it invites. I have seen it before. Whose life are you protecting, mother? Mine? Or the one you never got to have?" Silence answered him, and for the first time, he saw something shift in his mother's eyes, something old and unhealed. She didn't answer him directly, but she didn't stop him either when he turned and walked out. He sat in his car outside her house for almost 20 minutes afterward, hands gripping the steering wheel, replaying the conversation. For the first time in his life, he understood his mother not as an obstacle, but as a woman who had spent 30 years quietly grieving a choice that was never hers to make. It didn't excuse the pressure she'd put on Chioma, but it explained it, and understanding, he realized, was the first step toward actually forgiving someone instead of simply resenting them from a distance. That same week, Chairman Kim finally sat his son down and told him the full truth about Director Cho's campaign, the rumors, the pressure, the deliberate targeting of anything that could be used to make the family look weak. including his relationship. I should have told you sooner, his father admitted, rubbing his temples. I didn't want you carrying this weight while you were happy for once. That's exactly the problem, father, Kim Jun said quietly. Everyone in this family keeps deciding what I should or shouldn't carry, without asking me first. Chioma deserved to know what she was walking into. I deserved to know what I was protecting her from. Silence didn't protect anyone. It just made all of us weaker. His father said nothing for a long moment, then nodded slowly, something like respect passing over his tired face. 3 days passed. Chioma stopped answering his calls altogether. She told herself it was for the best, that love shouldn't feel this heavy, this complicated, this much like fighting against an entire family and an entire business war just to be allowed to exist beside someone. She began seriously considering something she hadn't thought about in months. Going back to Nigeria. Not because she didn't love Seoul, and not because she didn't love Kim Jun, but because she was tired of feeling like she had to prove her worth to people who had already decided she wasn't enough before they even met her properly. She told her father one evening, quietly, almost ashamed to say it out loud. I think I need to go back for a while, Papa, just to breathe. Her father studied her for a long moment. Running from pain doesn't always heal it, Chioma. Sometimes it just delays it. I know, she whispered, but I don't know what else to do. That night, she sat with her mother on the balcony, the city humming quietly below them, and finally said out loud the fear she'd been carrying silently for weeks. What if I'm always going to feel like a guest in every place I try to call home? Her mother was quiet for a long moment before answering. Then you build a home that travels with you, inside yourself, instead of waiting for a city or a family to hand it to you. I think you already know how to do that, Chioma. You've done it twice already, once in Nigeria, once here. Don't let heartbreak convince you that you have to start from zero. Chioma didn't have an answer for that yet, but she carried the words with her all the way to the airline website, where, hands trembling slightly, she booked a flight for the following week. If you think Chioma is making the right decision, comment stay strong. If you think she should have fought harder before running, comment fight for it. I want to see where this comment section lands because both sides have a point, and that's what makes this story real. Word travels fast in small circles, and it didn't take long for Kim Jun to hear through a mutual friend that Chioma had booked a flight back to Nigeria. He didn't call her. He knew calls weren't going to work anymore. Instead, he did something he had never done before in his life. He went to confront his mother one final time, not with anger, but with clarity. I need you to understand something, he said, standing in her study. I am not asking for your blessing anymore, Mother. I am telling you what I've decided. If Chioma leaves because of pressure this family created, I will never forgive either of us. Madame Yoon looked at her son for a long moment, seeing perhaps for the first time how deeply this ran, how this wasn't infatuation, but something steadier. Your father was not the man my family chose for me, she finally said, voice softer than he'd ever heard it. I had someone once too, a man with nothing to his name. My family destroyed it before it had the chance to become anything. I married your father because it was expected, and I built a life I do not regret. But I have wondered, every year since, what that other life might have looked like. Kim Jun stood frozen, hearing a truth about his mother he never knew existed. I am not trying to repeat their mistake with you, she continued. I convinced myself I was protecting you from heartbreak. Perhaps I was really protecting myself from watching you have something I never allowed myself to keep. Then don't stand in the way this time, he said quietly. Please, and deal with Cho and his rumors honestly. Hiding from him only feeds him more power. Hiding things from Chioma almost cost me everything. For the first time, his mother didn't respond with control or composure. She simply nodded, eyes glassy, and let him go. The following morning, she personally released a calm, factual statement through the family's office addressing the business rumors directly, cutting the legs out from under Director Cho's campaign before it could spread further. It was, in its own way, her first real act of protecting her son properly. Kim Jun arrived at Chioma's family house the evening before her flight, rain falling steadily. His suit soaked through by the time her father opened the door. She doesn't want to see anyone, her father said, though his eyes carried something gentler than his words. Sir, I know I don't deserve 5 minutes, Kim Jun said, breathless. But I need her to hear the truth, even if she still chooses to leave after. Her father studied him a long moment, the same way he studied every decision that mattered, and stepped aside. Chioma came down the stairs slowly, arms crossed, eyes red from crying she'd never admit to. You shouldn't have come, she said. I know, he said. I came anyway. Kim Yun. Just let me say this, and then I'll leave if you still want me to. He took a breath. I was a coward, not because I didn't love you, but because I was afraid of losing everything comfortable about my life if I chose you fully. I let my mother's fear become my silence. I let a business war I never told you about become another reason to protect you by hiding things instead of facing them with you. My silence became your pain. That's on me, not on you. Never on you. Chioma said nothing, tears sliding down slowly. My mother told me something tonight I never knew, he continued. She loved someone once and let her family take that choice away from her. She spent her whole life wondering what she lost. I don't want to become her story, Chioma. I don't want to wake up in 20 years wondering what I lost because I was scared of pressure that was never even mine alone to carry. You should have told me all of this weeks ago, she said quietly. About your mother. About whatever business trouble had your father's people watching us. About Mina. All of it. I know, he said. I'm telling you now, even if it's too late. She wiped her face, looking at him carefully, searching for something. I'm not staying because you showed up in the rain, Kim Jun. That's not how this works. I'm not asking you to stay because of tonight, he said. I'm asking you to stay because for the first time, I'm choosing you completely, out loud, in front of everyone, including my mother. No more hiding. No more silence. The company issue is being handled properly now, in the open, the way it should have been from the start. You keep saying promise like it's a magic word, Chioma said, voice shaking. You promised to walk me home the first day we met. You promised to always order for yourself instead of assuming what I wanted. Small promises. This is bigger than that, Kim Jun. This is my whole life you're asking me to keep choosing over and over, in a place that hasn't fully decided if I belong. Then let me spend every day proving I'm worth that choice, he said. Not with one grand gesture in the rain, but every single ordinary day after this one too. And if your mother never fully accepts me, then she'll have to watch us build a life anyway, he said. I'm not asking her permission anymore. I already told her that. And the business troubles? The rumors, the pressure I don't even fully understand yet. I'll tell you everything, he said. Starting tonight if you let me. No more deciding what you can and can't handle. You've survived leaving your whole country at 18 and building a new life twice already. I underestimated you. I won't do that again. Her father, standing quietly at the top of the stairs, finally spoke. Chioma, love is not about someone being perfect. It's about someone choosing to grow after they've failed you. The question is whether you believe he actually will. Chioma looked at Kim Jun for a long, long moment. If I stay, she said slowly, there's no more hiding parts of your life from me. No more silence when things get hard. No more protecting me by keeping me in the dark, whether it's your mother or your father's business or anything else. I promise, he said. That's a big promise. I intend to keep it. She didn't answer immediately. She walked to the door, looked out at the rain, at the life waiting for her back in Nigeria and the one standing soaked in front of her in Seoul, and for the first time in weeks, made a decision led by clarity instead of fear. Cancel my flight, she said quietly. Kim Jun exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for 3 weeks. The weeks that followed weren't perfect, and this story wouldn't be honest if it pretended they were. Mina eventually admitted what she'd done, ashamed and quiet, after Madame Yoon confronted her directly once the truth of the leaked story surfaced during an internal review. She apologized to Chioma in person, an apology Chioma accepted carefully, not because it erased what happened, but because holding on to that particular anger wasn't going to build the life she wanted either. I was jealous of something I never had the courage to go after myself, Mina admitted quietly. That doesn't excuse what I did. I just wanted you to know it wasn't really about you. It affected me either way, Chioma said honestly. But I'm not interested in carrying that with me anymore. Surprisingly, over the following months, something unexpected grew out of that difficult conversation. Mina, freed from years of quiet longing she'd never allowed herself to release, began attending events on her own terms instead of always positioning herself near Kim Jun. She eventually met someone at a mutual friend's gallery opening, an architect who had no connection to either family's business, and for the first time in years, people who knew her well said she looked genuinely lighter. I used to think loving him was the only future that made sense for me, Mina admitted to Chioma months later, the two of them running into each other at a charity function neither had expected the other to attend. Turns out I just needed to stop waiting for a life someone else was already living. I hope you find everything you're looking for, Chioma said, and meant it, surprising herself with how easily the words came. I hope the same for you, Mina replied. Genuinely. They didn't become close friends overnight, and this story won't pretend that every wound closes as neatly as people wish it would. 6 months later, Madame Yoon hosted a family dinner, and for the first time she personally invited Chioma, sitting beside her rather than across from her. It wasn't instant forgiveness or friendship. It was something better. It was respect, earned slowly, the way real relationships between people from different worlds are built, brick by brick, honest conversation by honest conversation. Chioma eventually started her own consulting business helping Nigerian companies expand into Asian markets, work she was good at long before she ever needed anyone else's approval to feel worthy of Seoul or of love. Chairman Kim, impressed by her sharpness during one dinner conversation about trade regulations, quietly became one of her earliest clients. Something he never publicly admitted was also his own quiet way of saying he approved. Her business grew faster than she expected, word spreading among small and mid-sized Nigerian companies eager to enter the Korean market. Drawn in by a consultant who genuinely understood both sides of the negotiating table, not just the language but the unspoken cultural expectations that so often derailed international deals before they even began. She hired her first employee within the year, a young Nigerian graduate fresh off the same flight path she'd once taken herself, and found a quiet, unexpected joy in mentoring someone navigating the same dual identity she'd spent years learning to embrace instead of hide. You make it look easy, her new hire told her one afternoon, watching Chioma handle a tense call between two executives with practiced calm. Being between two worlds like that. It wasn't always easy, Chioma admitted. For a long time I thought I had to choose one side to be taken seriously. Kim Jun kept his promise. No more silence. No more protecting her by hiding things. When Director Cho attempted one final push against the family business the following year, Kim Jun handled it in the open, informing Chioma of every development as it happened instead of shielding her from it. The takeover attempt failed, not because the family hid from the threat, but because they finally faced it together, transparently, without fear of what the truth might cost them. Director Cho, faced with a united family that refused to crumble under pressure or secrecy, eventually withdrew his campaign entirely, quietly selling off his shares in the logistics partner once it became clear that intimidation wasn't going to work on people who no longer had anything to hide. Chairman Kim, in a small gesture that meant more to Kim Jun than any inheritance ever could, handed his son full authority over the negotiations that finally resolved the conflict. You handled that better than I would have at your age, his father told him afterward. Not because you were tougher, because you weren't afraid to let people see the whole picture, including the parts that made you look vulnerable. I learned that the hard way, Kim Jun admitted. Almost too late. Most important lessons arrive that way, his father said. The important thing is that you learned it at all. A year after that rainy night at her father's door, Kim Jun proposed to Chioma on the same street where they'd first met, outside the same small coffee shop, holding the same kind of tea she'd been drinking that very first morning. I know this isn't the biggest, most dramatic place I could have chosen, he said, kneeling despite the small crowd gathering curiously around them. But this is where I first knew. I don't want to build the rest of my life on grand gestures that hide the truth. I want to build it right here in the ordinary, honest places with you. She said yes before he even finished the question, laughing through tears, the same tea cup trembling slightly in her free hand. The wedding took place the following spring, half in soul and half in spirit brought over from Lagos. Chioma insisted on wearing both a traditional Korean hanbok for the morning ceremony and a vibrant Nigerian aso-ebi for the reception that evening, refusing to let either half of herself be quietly left out of the biggest day of her life. Her father walked her down the aisle in the Korean ceremony wearing a suit tailored specifically to match the hanbok colors, something he'd requested himself without anyone asking. "Your mother is not the only one who gets to be proud today," he whispered to her before the doors opened. Madame Yoon sat in the front row, and when Chioma walked past her toward Kim Jun waiting at the altar, she reached out and briefly squeezed Chioma's hand, a small gesture that meant more than any formal speech could have. Before the ceremony began, Chioma's father and Chairman Kim met for the first time, standing outside the hall in their formal wear, two men from entirely different worlds sizing each other up with quiet respect. "Your son kept his word to me," Chioma's father said simply, extending his hand. "That means more to me than anything in his family name." "He learned that from watching men like you protect what matters," Chairman Kim replied, shaking it firmly. "It is an honor to finally call our families one." Madame Yoon joined them a moment later, bowing slightly to Chioma's mother, who bowed back before both women, without quite planning it, pulled each other into a warm embrace instead, laughing at their own surprise. Whatever distance had once stood between the two families dissolved quietly in that small, unscripted moment, long before either set of parents took their seats. During the reception, Chairman Kim stood to give a toast, his voice steady and warm. "I have watched my son grow up preparing for a company," he said, raising his glass. "I did not expect to watch him grow up preparing for a marriage built on honesty instead of convenience. That is a rarer inheritance than anything I could hand him, and I am proud he found it." Later that night, dancing slowly under string lights strung across the courtyard, Kim Jun rested his forehead against hers. "No more silence," he whispered, echoing the promise that had cost them so much to finally learn. "No more silence," she repeated, smiling against his shoulder. Her father found her briefly during the reception, pulling her aside near the edge of the courtyard where the music faded slightly into the night air. "8 years ago, I put my daughter on a plane and told her she would thank me one day," he said, voice thick with emotion he rarely showed. "I didn't know it would lead here. I just knew I never wanted you spending your life feeling like you had to shrink any part of yourself to be loved properly." "You were right, Papa," she said, resting her head briefly on his shoulder the way she used to as a child. "About all of it. I wasn't right about everything," he said, smiling. "But I was right about you. That was never in question." She looked out across the courtyard at Kim Jun laughing with her cousins who had flown in from Lagos, at Madame Yoon speaking animatedly with her own mother near the dessert table, at two entirely different worlds finally sitting comfortably at the same table because two people had finally chosen honesty over comfort. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been quick. But it had been worth every difficult conversation it took to get there. Here's the real lesson in this story, and I want you to sit with this for a second. Love was never the hardest part of Chioma and Kim Jun's journey. Honesty was. Silence nearly cost them everything. Not evil intentions, not lack of love, just quiet avoidance dressed up as protection. In real life, the relationships that survive pressure, family disapproval, jealous rivals, even outside forces trying to tear two people apart, are not the ones without problems. They are the ones where both people choose truth over comfort, even when truth is inconvenient, even when it risks upsetting people you love. If you are in a relationship right now where silence has replaced honesty, let this be your sign to have the hard conversation before distance does the talking for you. If this story moved you even a little, type "True Love Wins" in the comments right now so I know you made it to the end. Like this video if you believe honesty is the real foundation of every lasting love story. And subscribe if you want more real, raw stories like Chioma and Kim Jun's every single week. I'll see you in the next one.